I know the White Sox lost yesterday, but I'm going to still talk about how many wins they could have with my guest on today's episode of Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan, a contributor for SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the Fansided Network, and also have covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. Additionally, follow or subscribe to the show on your preferred podcast platforms. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Now, you've seen Brett Haffner's content on Sox on 35th and on X, formerly Twitter. And why I got him on today is he had this tweet last week, similar to what SouthsideSox.com did last year, except he's measuring the win totals the Sox need to get to reach certain milestones. And since we never have to worry about them having a historically awful season, I figured let's talk about it with Brett. He's also going to join me to talk about the Twins no longer being sold and MLB Pipeline's latest farm systems rankings. And Brett, thank you for joining me. Now, obviously, the math has changed from the tweet that you sent out last week. The Sox obviously did not win yesterday. They need a few more wins to obviously get over that 49.5 over underline. I believe Caesar so generously offered at one point last year. But let's get to some other win markers that you had. Which one do you think is possible? That 51 win total, the 60 win total, or should we dare to dream 63 wins to avoid 100 losses?
Now, I think if you asked me when I originally wrote this tweet, I think I maybe would have went a little higher than maybe what I think now. I think that we've seen a little bit of, some more regression to the mean. We lose some close ball games, and that's going to happen, I think that, as we speak, the Sox are, we've got 44 wins right now, which not a lot, but it is more wins than last year. So we will take that. And we've got 41 games left. I think that if we want a good safety net, I think 55 wins in my tweet of every 5. I think that 55 is your safety net. That means they go 11 and 30 the rest of the way. My math is right. 11. Yeah, I think 11 and 30 the rest of the way out. I think that's your safety net. We're going to see some downs. We'll see some ups, but we'll see some downs.
Yeah, and the one thing with the hot streak after they came out of the All-Star break, it kind of made us forget, like, oh my gosh, this team still has plenty of holes. Like you said, playing in one-run games, like losing 1-0 to the Tigers, and also, not being able to hit with runners in scoring position, or again, having a starting rotation issue now where guys just can't eat innings because a lot of them are just up against their career innings limits.
Yeah, it just feels like it's going to take a lot to potentially try and play, close to 500 ball the rest of the season. And looking through the schedule and where I think where my official kind of wins prediction is at from here on out, we've got a lot of interesting matchups, and, which we'll kind of get into the second topic a little later. We do get to play against the Twins a bunch, but we got to face up a team that we've never played well against many times, Kansas City. That's where Sox are headed next. We've got the Yankees twice. We've got the Braves. We've got the Padres. There's a lot of teams that, depending on where their season is at, by the time we get to them, they may have a little extra fire in them for playoff potential too. So, it's really interesting.
Yeah. What inspired you to actually start tracking this, kind of what they need to do? Because to all apologies, I had Brett Valentini from Southside Sox on a lot last year to talk about that because they were tracking that. What inspired, for the losses, what inspired you to be like, hey, they need to do this, this, and this to get to these win marks?
I think it was after the total, disaster that was 2024. It felt like even getting to 41 wins with so many games left is like, okay, let's see what they can achieve from here on out. Like, how does this how does this rebound of a season with new personnel, all these kids, what does that look like at the end of a year? And so it was kind of a little reassuring to say that we can gain 20 wins by the Sox didn't have to play amazing from when I sent that tweet out, for 60 wins to go 19 and 33 does not sound that great. So, to think about it's kind of coming from more of a hopeful perspective per se, but being able to gain 20 wins from one year to the next year, and especially with a guy like Venable as a first-year manager out there, having to deal with all of these different things in his first year of managing. There's a lot of kind of the small wins that we can see just from player development, from trying to gain wins, but it's not easy, as we've seen in the last 11 games. They went 3-8 since I put out the tweet. So it's not going to be easy, but.
Yeah, and I'm not going to blame you for, cursing them, because, again, the team was a flawed team. And I think for a lot of us, we got caught up in the fun bad, not realizing, hey, fun bad also means you're bad, that type of stuff there.
And that's why it's fun bad at the end of the day, right? Because they are fun and they're bad. So put it together and you get a wild roller coaster of a ride.
Now, most teams would look at 55 wins as that is completely awful, horrendous. But for the White Sox, it would actually not only just be an improvement because obviously they would have done better than last year, but because the arrow's pointed up. But I even said that, I would love for the White Sox to, if they win only 55 games, that'd be great because you still have good lottery odds. But also, you can only win 55 games and still have the arrow pointed up. It just seems like this is one of those things where it's like, hey, there's hope, even though we're losing a lot.
And I think it just puts this team in such a unique spot where they can focus on so many different things now. They're not thinking about, the season's lost. And that's clearly been, what we've seen from the young players, what we've seen from the veterans doing their best to kind of guide and nurture these new players too. It's clear that even though the record obviously sucks really bad on paper, they're able to do so much with the remaining time that they have left on this season. And a lot of the dividends are showing just with individual players and how they're performing, which has been cool to see because we've seen a lot of young players actually get playing time this year.
All right. Hopefully I'm citing the correct thing that you do, because again, you're one of my favorite, White Sox social media follows. Have you rocked the overalls yet at a game? And if so, what is the vibe like at a ballpark? You're the one that, got the overalls, right?
I did wear them for the first game of the Crosstown this year, where we absolutely whooped the Cubs. And that was a very, very, very good decision.
Yes.
And what made it even better was I was there with two Cubs fans, friends of mine, and one of them was wearing his Cubs overalls.
Yes.
And so there was a lot of crap being yelled at him, and I loved that.
Yeah. So how does the vibe feel, though, right now this year compared to last year? Because last year, it sounded like going to Rate Field was going to a morgue.
It's definitely felt a lot better, I would say. Last year, I feel like just the atmosphere, there was all of this, I think, dread, kind of dread and despair almost felt like the right way. And it almost just felt like, hey, people are here and it feels like they're drowning out their sorrows with some good food and some beer. They're there for many different reasons than the product on the field, right? But this year, it's really felt different because there's this juice of all the young kids, of leaning into a lot of the 2005 team or many other White Sox historical figures over time. There's been a lot of appreciation, and honestly, you get a lot of juice and excitement when people are talking about these guys, because now amongst the fandom, it's like Colson Montgomery, he's become a name. People are starting to recognize that just outside of the diehards, right? Because he hits all these homers now. I think that it's definitely been an improved atmosphere. And I actually it's been a couple weeks since I've even been to the ballpark. So I'm looking forward to go, I think probably next week at some time.
All right. Well, Jerry Reinsdorf has obviously made being a White Sox fan difficult. But the Twins ownership has also made it tough to be a Minnesota fan. Jerry's baller move may have made their suffering go even longer. I want to discuss with Brett after the break the Twins' recent news that they're not being for sale. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. And that's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. And my wife loves using Monarch Money as it makes doing the budget less stressful. I love it from the start because it was showing me where I was wasting money on things like subscriptions I thought I had canceled. Turns out I didn't. And as my grandpa once said, it's not how much you make, it's how much you save. And Monarch Money is helping me save big time. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com. code LOCKEDONMLB. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms. So make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball, venting with me. Here with Brett Haffner of SoxOn35th.com. And Brett, first of all, where can we find all your good social media content and all your content to begin with?
So first off, follow Sox on 35th. We're doing a lot of fun things over there. We got a great crew over there. You can follow me on X/Twitter at Haffball7, HAFFBALL7. And you can find me on Instagram as well at HaffnerRun007.
Yeah, and Brett's one of my favorite follows on White Sox Twitter. So I would, if you're not on still, if you're still on Twitter, and you know what, hey, the cesspool is starting to clean out, still be on there because White Sox Twitter is amazing. You should be following Brett. Okay, so Brett, obviously we're stuck with Jerry until 2029, but just showing how big of a hater move was him. I mean, just how big of a hater move was it of him getting Justin Ishbia to abandon his bid to buy the Twins, especially after the Pollins, they're not selling. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest baller moves Jerry's ever made.
It's honestly so impressive because I have been thinking for so long that the writing was on the wall that the Twins were going to sell. Like, it came out, that Manfred a while ago had said that this is going to happen. Like, I can foresee this transaction happening pretty soon. Even just, there seemed to be the plan. I originally had thought that Ishbia was going to be doing the Twins thing. And then Jerry just to steal him away from a division rival and actually get to work, make a succession plan. Awesome. I think that it makes our move with the White Sox look even better, actually, now that the Twins are not making any changes other than adding those limited partners to probably help just get rid of all that horrible debt that they have.
Yeah, I mean, I know it was the debt that Justin Ishbia, turned him away, but it was like, I have a feeling what probably, got him to leave the Twins was Jerry just saying, well, you can own a team in the third biggest market. You've always been trying to buy the White Sox. And, oh, by the way, you can build your, legacy ballpark wherever you want. So I think that is such a huge move. Although the one thing I find funny with some in Sox social media world and just, around the Sox world is, sort of that laughing that the Pollins are staying. I mean, the Twins have made the playoffs a lot more than the White Sox under the Pollins, and they've won 2 more World Series, even though it's been forever ago. So it's like, it's one of those things where, hey, the Twins have a little bit of a better legacy, but at the same time, now you look at it, both have the same terrible legacy, Yeah,
and now the Twins are in the position of, hey, now they have a bunch of kind of gambles with young prospects, and they're, relying on Byron Buxton and Joe Ryan just to be their centerpieces. Who even knows if they'll be around for quite a long time. But I will say, though, it's almost refreshing to not feel alone in having a fellow local franchise struggle with, frustration over their ownership, because we were the laughingstock for a very long while with, all of our sell the team campaigns and everyone just, on Jerry Reinsdorf beyond belief. But now that, there are actions in place and that a end is in sight and is near, it's a completely different perception now.
And what cracks me up is
now the Twins are having to deal with what we did.
Yeah, and what cracks me up is the Minnesota Twins thought, like, well, if we just don't show up to the stadium, they'll definitely listen to us. It's like, no, even if 10,000 of you show up, they can still make money off of that. What you got to do is you got to do things like, sell the team. You got to make it clear that, hey, you're not going to get public funding for your new vanity stadium project. Those are the things that kind of force those fans out. Force those owners out. And, just not going to the ballpark didn't seem like it was going to do the trick.
And I just don't understand from the first place how the Twins have fallen from their 2023 playoff run, because that was amazing. I went to college with a lot of Twins fan friends, and just they had probably more excitement than a lot of other franchises when they beat the Blue Jays in the wild card, because it was their first, playoff series win in decades. So just for them to have fallen off this steep cliff is it's really something to watch from the sidelines and as a division rival. And who knows, maybe now we won't be the bottom feeders of the AL Central.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. I was thinking, like, man, the White Sox are going to be at the bottom for a few years because, you look at it last year, 3 teams make the playoffs, and the Twins, they could have had the Tigers knock on that, amazing run. And they were also a lot of those, the Twins and the Royals definitely benefited from the White Sox being historically awful. And then it's like you fast forward to a year. I thought the Royals, I mean, obviously they're still somewhat in it, but I thought the Royals would sustain with Bobby Witt Jr. being, a stud in their centerpiece. And the Guardians, even though they made some moves that, to shed payroll, I thought, okay, they could still be in it. And it's like, well, maybe the division might be a little bit more wide open a little bit sooner than we think long term.
Yeah, it doesn't really seem like, we have like the Tigers are, as we've seen in the last like 5-6 weeks, they're vulnerable. They're not this insurmountable 15-game lead on the division team that we thought they would be. And I mean, with the Guardians subtracting and the Royals just middling along, but remaining almost in contention, they're in a weird spot. It's just, the Sox can kind of, like you said, I think we're still going to be toward the bottom for a little while longer, but it kind of feels like we can start slowly chipping away at kind of moving up that AL Central a little bit, but it's going to take some time.
All right. I know Sox on 35th, you guys and gals are a lot on the younger side. You're the hip, type of, kids around on the block. And obviously we're talking about Jerry. And I know there's a lot of the fans on the older side of the fan base that really, really hate Jerry because he has really done a number to them because obviously we've just been around longer. I mean, I'm kind of in the middle, 43. I've had Jerry as the owner the entire time. I've known outside of 2005, I've known nothing but frustration and agony, the white flag trade. On your end, you've got to see, certain things maybe be a little bit more better. What has it been like to be a young fan of the White Sox while Jerry Reinsdorf has been the owner?
I would say that, my experience isn't terribly far different than most older fans and whatnot. I think at the end of the day, it's like, having my sort of like peak age in my 20s just be filled with the worst baseball ever, for example, last year, I think that kind of like puts the nail in the coffin of like, I'm super like anti like as well. Like I, had a lot of disdain for, just having to accept how bad that things are and were. And like, honestly, just at the end of the day, like the frustration of, in reading all those expose articles last year, amidst the horrible season, it's like just to, have everyone's kind of beliefs confirmed on how poorly the organization was run just kind of says it right there of this is how like this is what's going on, that my baseball team is going to be this bad for a lot of my time. Obviously Sox have made the playoffs a few times in my time of being alive, a little too young to fully like be super invested in the 05 World Series because I am in my 20s. So was a little young for that time. But, in like, for example, 2021, like that was a time where the Field of Dreams game, awesome. Like I remember that very vividly. Like there were so many different things when in that age of being like, okay, I thought really something can happen there. And then just to have that completely fall off and be where we are now in my sort of peak time as a baseball fan is just definitely very, very, very frustrating.
Well, one of the reasons why the White Sox fell off in 2021 was because they just didn't draft well enough to bring in more reinforcements after the core guys came up here. And it could, we might be risking that because Baseball America and MLB Pipeline has their latest team's farm system rankings out, and the White Sox have plummeted. So let's discuss with Brett, should we be worried after the break? Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, wherever they get their podcast. This show is available on all major podcast platforms. Here with Brett Haffner of Sox on 35th. And Brett, Baseball America came up with their updated farm system rankings. They got the Sox at 18th. And Pipeline just came up with their rankings, and they got the Sox at 17th, a drop from number 6. So is it time to be concerned, or is it more like, well, duh, the system was top heavy. Guys like Edgar Carroll and Kyle Teal just graduated from prospect status.
I'll say that it never looks good. I would say it's never a good look to say, oh, our farm system is 17th or 18th, depending on which source you read. But I think there's a lot of things that go into it. Like, heck, we just graduated a bunch of guys from the list. Like when you graduate top 100 guys like Carroll and Teal, of course the system rating is going to go down. When Hagen Smith and Noah Schultz have struggled a little bit, of course their valuation has gone a little bit down, which is then going to push things down further. Colson even, was having all these struggles up until recently. So, I bet that was influencing decisions too. I'm not really that concerned because there's also a lot of things going forward that can really boost the farm system rating over time, right? Like we talked about before, we're in a great position to get our lottery odds in a great place. So if we end up between, the 1, 2, 3, 4 pick, that's really going to boost up because that'll be a top 100 prospect right there. If they end up deciding to really bite the gambit and also do a Luis Robert trade, that might get you some really good talent that could still be in prospect territory. I think that there's a lot of room to definitely go up with this. I don't really foresee the system going too far down per se, especially if guys like, Noah Schultz and Hagen Smith really, especially in the beginning of 2026, if they, have a good offseason, have a good winter, have good early spring training, I think that there's going to be a lot of room to kind of shoot back up into potentially that, like, maybe top 12, at least get even close to the top third, which I think that would be a good spot to be in considering all the talent we're bringing up, because we're going to keep bringing guys up. That seems what's going to be happening.
Yeah, and I think also some scouting services just aren't high on certain guys that maybe when you do actually turn on the games a little bit more, or you follow like what you guys do on Pipeline on 35th or futuresox.net that are really studying these guys like Shane Murphy. I mean, you even got Brian Bannister, one of the most respected pitching gurus, saying Shane Murphy has the best stuff in the system, and yet he's not in any of the top 30s for Baseball America or at least MLB Pipeline. He might be in Baseball America, that's paywalled. But it's like, some of these systems just look at different things. We know Pipeline can have its faults. The only reason why I still like it is because it's free. And they do have some decent guys, but it is just more of the things where it's like, it's just what's in the eye of the beholder. And that's always been the problem with baseball scouting to begin with. It's the eye of the beholder. So what matters is do the Sox have the development? And some people are still skeptical and saying, no, they can't develop talent. But then you got Yoandres Gomez, for example, 2 nights ago coming in and just throwing absolutely filthy stuff. And it's like, could that be a development win? Or again, Colson Montgomery, the odds, the lengths that they went to develop him. It seems like maybe things are turning around, and it just might take a little bit more time to develop more guys to be like, hey, they've got some depth.
And seeing the small wins, like I think Gomez was an awesome one that no one really expected him to just shove and look filthy the other night. But that was awesome. Like he gave us innings. He had like 7 Ks. Great. I mean, he's been on 3 teams this year. He was in the Yankees. He was with the Dodgers. And he comes to the, bottom of the barrel White Sox and starts to shove after a lot of time of development, which that's really cool to see. But like, there's been so many guys who we've seen, we know their traits from their scouting reports from watching them in AAA. They come up to the major. They come up to the majors. And then they're able to even go like further and beyond. I think Colson's a great example of, I don't think anyone would have predicted how hot of a start he would have. And the good thing about Colson too, is seeing someone like him make adjustments in real time. Like we're seeing, like in the RBI single he got last night, we saw the typical swing and miss for strikes 1 and 2, but we're able to see these kind of in-game adjustments that he's even able to make, beyond just the scouting profile, which are really good things to see.
And I think it's going to take a little bit of time too, like you said, to come up the rankings, just because you did all these changes in international free agency, but it's going to take a little bit of time for international free agency to get up to snuff to what you've been, because I think they've been drafting decently. I at least like their process when it comes to drafting. And again, all you can do is draft. And then it's the player development that has to take over. And I think Mike Shirley's done a good job beyond maybe you didn't do the process right with Hagen Smith, but at the same point, they've done good process. But the international side, it's going to take probably 2 or 3 years for them to actually start impacting the franchise, because again, it's almost like college basketball recruiting. Like they have to start getting in with these kids that are now 14 and 16, 15 and 16 years old to get them to sign within the next, 2 years. So that's another thing that's like, it's going to take a little bit of time for them to be able to continuously be maybe up in the rankings.
And again, like you said too, like we're the ones watching the Sox stuff all the time. We're the ones watching all the AA, single A. Like we're following those games. We're seeing how these guys know. We're, really getting kind of that best eye of how these prospects are, right? So there's a lot of guys who are like, probably in our eyes, we think, oh, they're super underrated because they've been doing quite well. And like, I think of, guys on the kind of offensive side, like, we're seeing like Antonacci and Bonnemer and Bergola. Like, there's a lot of guys that, like, you know, we think that, you know, we've been seeing a lot of good stuff, which I enjoy that. So to me, seeing number 17, 18 in the system, like, sure, it obviously just doesn't, it's not fun to hear that we're like that, but I think that there's a lot more positive momentum than just that group ranking. I think that there's a lot more positive momentum than we're kind of seeing in the rankings.
Yeah, and I think also, and I'm not trying to rationalize here. I mean, at the end of the day, it's still not great to obviously drop that far because, I mean, everybody saw it, or they should have seen it. They're very top heavy. It speaks to you need more depth. And it also speaks to then, I mean, one of the reasons why the last rebuild failed was they just didn't have the reinforcements when you were ready or the supplements. But on the flip side, when I look at a lot of these White Sox prospects that I've been watching, and I try to catch as much as I can, I do see a lot more talent there that at least can be these guys when they come up. They're raised floor players. And I think sometimes these rankings are looking for, hey, what's the ceiling on most of these guys? When it's like, yeah, you want as many superstars as possible. I'm not saying that there's, you know, just go for a bunch of 1.5 F4 players. But if you can develop some 1.5 to 2 F4 guys, that's going to make up the core of your team. And then, yeah, you want to then go after your superstars, kind of like what may happen when Braden Montgomery comes up. You might already have your superstars in Edgar Carroll and Kyle Teal and Colson Montgomery. But you look at it, like, for example, Chase Mydroth, even though you had to trade for him, or Miguel Vargas, if you can get those guys that are at least raised for players, that can also help your core and help you be successful long term.
And that's what, you know, the draft strategy feels like, is that they're getting these guys that I think, like, are going to be these, like, high floor guys, which is very exciting, like, you know, just to continue to develop on those skills. And that's, you know, who knows how long a guy Chase Mydroth is going to be in the starting lineup, because we've got, you know, good development going on, you know, in the minors right now. So, like, that's a good problem to have. Like, we've got a lot of, like, good middle infield depth, which I'm excited about to see kind of where that goes over the next, you know, probably 2 years or so.
Yeah, I would argue that at least they're drafting guys that have floors to be productive, because it seemed like to me, like Jacob Gonzalez, even though, you know, hey, he might still be that raised for a player. It just seemed like Jacob Gonzalez, like, we got to draft a guy that we think can get to the major leagues. And you want to be like, what can he do in the major leagues? I don't know. He'll just get there. And it seems like that was a lot of things that they were drafting. And that I would say I agree with. At least they're shifting their focus. And also they did take a swing on a couple of guys with some high ceilings in Billy Carlson. If his swing adjustment can take place, they're talking about maybe the potential next Bobby Witt Jr., a little bit lower, but still. And Jaden Fauske, he's got a high upside too.
But yeah, like, good emphasis on a hit tool, good emphasis on, you know, like, solid defense too. Like, those things actually being prioritized is really cool to see.
Yeah, it's like watching the Tigers. I mean, if you can get guys that are in the place to, you know, rob hits, and then again, if you can get a bunch of collections of, you know, 2 F4, 3 F4, 4 F4 guys, yeah, you're going to be very competitive. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. And I'll be back tomorrow with a discussion on how I am actually dreading the White Sox going to Kansas City. Brett, thank you for joining me again. Where can we find all your great content?
Thanks, Todd. Appreciate coming on here. Always good to chat about the White Sox. You can find me on Twitter/X at halfball7. You can find me on Instagram at HafnerRun007. And as always, follow Sox on 35th as well, because we're doing a lot of fun stuff over there.
Yeah, and Brett's one of my favorite Twitter follows, so definitely make sure you're following him. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion with Brett Haffner of Sox on 35th. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dub, or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at LockedOnWhiteSox@gmail.com. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.